let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at the school top 50 secret and how a guy named Rahul finally stopped feeding the fee monster. So picture Rahul. He's 25 years old, sitting on the edge of his bed in a tiny apartment in Noida. Now, on paper, he's supposed to be entirely set. He's got that stable corporate job pulling in 30,000 rupees a month. But in reality, every single month, he just sits there and watches his salary slip through his fingers like dry sand.
It's a question you've probably asked yourself, right? Why does earning a totally stable salary still feel like you're going broke? Well, for Rahul, despite the steady paycheck, there's this quiet, constant weight in his chest. It's the rising rent, the grocery bills that somehow sting a little more every week, and the truly terrifying creep of inflation. I mean, we're talking about healthcare costs climbing at an alarming 14% every single year.
And here's a crazy stat: 75%. Just like 75% of his peers, Rahul has absolutely zero emergency fund. Nothing. Which basically makes his salary this incredibly fragile solvency bridge that barely stretches to his next payday.
So, to cope with all this pressure, Rahul decides he needs to at least look like he's winning. He visits a local dealership and completely falls in love with a sleek, cute hatchback. He's literally this close to signing up for a car loan that's going to run him 15,000 rupees a month in EMIs. That's half his take-home pay. And honestly, he's being dangerously fueled by that toxic social media advice you see everywhere, you know the one? Money is energy. The more you put out, the more it comes back. It treats budgeting like it's just a mindset problem instead of actual math.
But here's the reality check. Money is not energy. Money is math. And adopting the spending habits of some imaginary, ultra-rich future version of yourself is exactly how Americans ended up with a record-breaking $1.28 trillion in credit card debt. You're basically just spending your future self's salary at today's brutal interest rates.
Which brings us to our first core concept, the depreciating asset reality. Just as Rahul is literally about to grab the pen and sign his life away for that hatchback, his friend Samir steps in. And Samir doesn't bring energy to the conversation, he brings a calculator. He's there to expose the brutal math of financing depreciating assets.
Samir points out something mind-blowing. You're about to sign a subscription to your own past, he warns him. He shows Rahul that if he took that exact same $15,000 a month and just invested it in a diversified index fund, compounding at an average 8% return over 40 years, that turns into a staggering $2.4 million decision. Samir hits the nail on the head. Most people aren't actually too poor to become wealthy. They're just financing depreciating assets on an 84-month schedule so they can sit in traffic in a slightly nicer chair.
Okay, so Rahul walks away from the car, but then he mentions he wants to put his remaining cash into this actively managed mutual fund he saw on a YouTube ad. And that brings us to our next concept, defeating the fee monster.
So, Samir brilliantly explains how index funds work using what he calls the school top 50 analogy. Imagine a school that publishes a list of its top 50 performing students. If a student's grades start slipping, they be kicked off the list, and a better student just takes their place. You don't need to pay an incredibly expensive tutor to try and guess which individual student is going to score highest next week. You just buy the entire list. That's the index.
And this contrast is absolutely crucial, because passive index funds, like the Nifty 50, just quietly copy the market. They don't need highly paid research teams or constant stock trading. So the fee? A tiny 0.05%. Meanwhile, that active fund manager from the YouTube ad is charging a massive 2.5% fee just to try and beat the market. That 2.5% is a literal fee monster eating up Rahul's future returns, whereas the low-cost index fund lets his money compound totally untouched.
All right, moving on to the three-filter income pivot. Walking away from the dealership, Rahul has a total light bulb moment. He realizes that cutting expenses hits a hard floor. There's only so much you can cut. But raising his income? That has absolutely no ceiling. The only hiccup is he currently has zero capital to start a business.
So, Samir teaches him the three-filter system. It's a super structured way to evaluate any side business. You just ask yourself three simple questions. 1. Time. What hours do you actually have free outside your 9 to 5? 2. Skill. What do you already know how to do? And 3. Capital. How much cash can you actually put in?
Rahul runs his filters. He's got 2 hours a day in the evenings, zero capital, but he is highly skilled at building automated Excel trackers for his corporate job. So he spends 2 weekends, about 15 hours, packaging his best work into a digital personal finance and budgeting toolkit. He lists it on Gumroad for 499 rupees, puts up a simple LinkedIn post, and goes to bed.
Tuesday night, 3:14 a.m., his phone quietly buzzes on his nightstand. Payment received 499 rupees. It is the very first money he's ever earned that didn't require him to trade an hour of his life for a paycheck. It's small, but man, it changes his entire financial default.
Which leads us to our final step, automating your financial freedom. Now that Rahul has shifted his mindset and built a totally new income stream, he stops trying to be heroic with his willpower. Because let's be real, willpower fails. Instead, he completely changes his banking checkbox. He logs into his banking portal and sets up an automated payday transfer. Now, the exact second his $30,000 salary hits his account, $5,000 is instantly swept into his low-cost index fund. He does this before he can even look at it or become a person with opinions on how to spend it. Plus, he commits every single rupee of his new digital product sales entirely to building up that crucial 6-month emergency airbag.
So look at how far he's come. Rahul didn't magically get a massive inheritance, and he didn't launch some flashy tech startup. But by ignoring those crooked social media averages, dodging the massive car loan trap, using the 3-filter system to launch a zero-capital product, and automating his low-cost index investing, he finally ended his financial fear. He's no longer putting his survival on layaway. He's actually building his own freedom.
Which brings us to the most important question for your own finances today. When you look at where your money is going this month, are you continuously paying off the broke version of your past self with high-interest debts and depreciating assets, or are you building the automated systems that will finally set you free? Think about that before your next payday. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.